Welcome to Mo Recap. Today, I'll be recapping an unusual film about a couple dealing with their troubled marriage. This is Gone Girl from 2014. Let's get started. July 5th. Nick sits drinking his morning coffee, exhausted, facing a tough decision. Instead of going grocery shopping, he makes the rational choice to have a few drinks at the local bar. He's greeted warmly by the lovely bartender Margot, who happens to be his twin sister. It's his 5th wedding anniversary, and he's drowning in memories of how he met his wife, Amy. He narrates that he'd love to crack open her skull and examine her brain to answer the eternal question all married couples have. What are you thinking? He remembers the first time they met in New York and how they immediately fancied each other. At the time, Amy was writing personality quizzes for a magazine. When she asked what he did for a living, he told her he was the man who would save her from all that awesomeness. He wrote for a men's magazine. They continued talking, but Amy found it hard to believe he wasn't lying to her. She joked that his chin looked quite villainous, so he covered it up and insisted that everything he was saying was 100% true. Of course, they kissed on the way home. Nick just couldn't resist the sugar on her lips. While playing a board game with Margot, he tells her that Amy loves to give him puzzles on their anniversary, and he expects one this year too. Wood is the clue for this year. Margot suggests he slap Amy with his family's wooden paddle. Nick receives a call from a neighbor saying his cat is outside. He returns home to find the front door open. He calls for Amy, but she doesn't answer. Walking into the living room, he sees a table flipped over with its glass top shattered across the floor. Nick yells Amy's name, which terrifies his neighbor. The police arrive and Nick shows them around, revealing that he and Margot own the bar together. Coffee-addicted Detective Rhonda pins yellow sticky notes to important locations in his house, while accompanied by her partner James. Rhonda notices blood spatter in an unusual spot in the kitchen, and James gives Nick a suspicious look. The detective continues searching for clues and stops by Amy's impressive gallery of books. Nick seems concerned. Rhonda knows and admires Amy's novels. In Nick's memory, he replays the night one of Amy's books was published. She told him about the real-life moments the book was based on. However, the character lives her best life, achieving things the real Amy didn't. Amazing Amy, the character in the book, becomes a prodigy at playing the cello, plays volleyball on the varsity team, and gets a dog. Unlike the real Amy, who quit playing cello at age 10, was cut from the team her freshman year, and never had a dog. At the police station, Nick is interrogated by Detective Rhonda, who explains the seriousness of the situation. A forensics team is sent to his house, Amy's phone and credit cards are being tracked, and a press conference will be held tomorrow. Nick cracks a joke about being in a Law & Order episode. The detective gets a bad vibe from Nick because he doesn't really know much about Amy. All he knows is that she has high standards. The officers doubt the strength of their marriage, and Nick is ordered to call Amy's parents since he hasn't informed them of her disappearance. Nick remembers the time he spent with Amy at the library. While Nick seems to have found a good book by Jane Austen, Amy suggests they engage in some horizontal refreshment at the next stop. Nick silently thanks Jane Austen. The library visit was the inspiration for their 2nd anniversary clue, cotton. Amy gave him expensive Italian cotton sheets. Guess what Amy got? Italian cotton sheets. At the Dunn residence, Detective Rhonda meets Noelle, who introduces herself as Amy's best friend living 5 doors down. Meanwhile, the forensics team confirms that the spatter in the kitchen is definitely blood. To be certain, a luminol sweep is ordered. Upstairs, James discovers an interesting fact. The house is rented in Amy's name. What a mystery. But wait, everything is in her name, including Nick's bar. Even Rhonda isn't impressed with James's detective work. Under Amy's clothes, they find the first clue. July 6th, Nick wakes up with a hangover. Margot advises him not to shower, so Rhonda and her team will think he was up all night worrying about his wife. Margot tries to give him advice on how to act throughout the day, but Nick tells her he'll just be himself. They both arrive at the police station where Amy's father greets Nick. The in-laws and twins are taking over the press conference. They've prepared speeches and Nick goes first. He's shy in front of the cameras but does his job, saying 2 sentences and even putting on a smile when requested. At first, it seems that Amy's parents are more interested in finding their daughter. They both say a little more than Nick, but that quickly changes when they use this as an opportunity to promote Amazing Amy merchandise. Amy's mother asks Nick if he knows about Desi, Amy's ex-boyfriend who was obsessed with her and attempted suicide after she broke up with him. A restraining order was filed afterward. Rhonda becomes suspicious after learning that Desi lives within a 2-hour drive. There's also a man named Tommy who was Amy's boyfriend 8 years ago in New York. She broke up with him after he got physical with her, and charges were filed against him. Compared to Tommy, Nick seems like a nice guy after all. Rhonda asks Nick to stay longer and shows him the first clue they found in Amy's drawer. He explains that it's a treasure hunt for their anniversary that his wife organized. He looks at it and quickly solves it, knowing where to go. In Nick's tiny office at the school, another clue has been left for him. Rhonda interrupts as he's reading it, asking questions like his ex did in college after finding one of these. Same answer as in college. He manages to lie about where the next clue is hidden. Nick arrives at his father's house. Surprisingly, he's forgotten the code to deactivate the alarm system. Rhonda interrupts him, having followed him there. An awkward situation for Nick. He leads her outside, and she questions whether this is the brown house mentioned in the second clue that Nick hid from her. Nope, it's still blue, he says and walks away. The third clue infuriates Nick when Amy tells him where she hid the fourth clue. It's where he keeps his anniversary 5 gifts. Female dog. Nostalgia resurfaces from the time when their marriage was tested. Amy recorded in her diary that it was a tough period when Nick lost his job, and she was forced to lend money to her parents from her trust fund. Almost all of it. At that time, Nick was depressed and spent money carelessly, which was hard for Amy. He wasn't used to being unemployed, and he felt Amy didn't trust him or his intentions, but she kept motivating him, saying he would find a job. July 7th. An event is organized by Amy's parents. When Nick arrives, many people stare at him. Margot sarcastically compliments him on looking terrible. Nick denies to Rhonda that Noelle is Amy's best friend, and James makes it clear he doesn't like Nick. A woman named Shauna introduces herself, feeling sorry for Nick and saying she can comfort him with chicken Frito pie. When Nick asks her to delete a picture of them, this upsets Shauna and she leaves. Amy's mother is also angry. She thinks Nick is having a good time, but he replies that it's his nightmare. He's just trying to be nice to the people volunteering to help find Amy. The search continues with many volunteers. Margot's watching TV when Nick appears on the news. The report aligns with James and Amy's mother's opinion that Nick doesn't look affected by his wife's absence. Margot worries that Nick is hiding something from her. Nick is startled by the public's judgment and wishes he could go to his sister's place without being judged. In the past, Amy and Nick moved from New York to Missouri to care for Nick's mother, who was diagnosed with cancer. Amy didn't mind the move. She just wanted to be asked. That's when she first wished to disappear. When Margot goes to sleep, Nick gets a text message from Andy, one of his students who wants to see him. They have to be careful, but Nick still can't resist her. She jokes about checking her underwear inventory to see if those were hers in Nick's office. Nick is serious and makes sure she doesn't reveal their relationship to anyone, especially during the investigation. Andy mentions that he planned to get a divorce, which Nick forbids her to speak about again. After Amy suspected Nick was cheating, she asked if they could have a baby to give her a real purpose in Missouri. Nick thought it was the worst possible time, and they had a fight. Nick couldn't control himself and pushed Amy to the ground. Amy became scared he would hurt her more. She realized how frightened she was of him. James and Rhonda question a merchant for information about Amy. He actually knows her and reports that she desperately wanted to buy a gun on Valentine's Day. Amy knew Nick wanted a divorce, but didn't ask for it because she was his financial support. She became paranoid and thought she'd sleep better with a gun. July 8th. Although Nick promised to be quick, the lovers spent the night together at Margot's. He's only fast in the morning, throwing Andy out within seconds of waking up. Nick thought he'd gotten away with it, but Margot is furious. Of course she's mad about him lying. Margot is shocked that he's cheating on Amy with one of his students. Nick is offended. He reveals how terrible Amy made him feel all this time. Margot tells him he's in serious trouble if anyone finds out his secret. She shows him that he's all over the news, and not in a good way. Remember Shauna? They look cute together in the photos. At least defense attorney Tanner is on Nick's side, defending his unusual behavior. Ellen, the news anchor, is testing Nick's patience like every woman has in recent days. Margot suggests he hire Tanner. Nick returns to his house. The housekeeper clearly isn't getting paid. It's obvious the forensics team has been there. They've taken samples from the range hood in the kitchen. While Nick enjoys ice cream, one of the team members is still searching outside. James is surprised Nick hasn't been arrested and challenges Rhonda. James doesn't believe in Nick's innocence, but for Rhonda, there's insufficient evidence that Amy needed a gun to protect herself from Nick. As Rhonda tells James never to speak to her like that, the blood test results arrive from the kitchen sample. It's Amy's blood. James believes the news anchor Ellen more than his partner Rhonda. In the evening, Nick prepares for another event to ask for help finding his missing wife. Nick says he's innocent and loves Amy. Andy isn't happy hearing this. The crowd loves his speech when Noelle suddenly interrupts, questioning why he didn't give the police information about Amy's pregnancy. Andy, Margot, and Amy's parents are all shocked. Nick flees from the journalists and jumps into a police car. Rhonda is sick of Nick's lies. Photos prove that Amy and Noel were friends, but Nick insists they don't prove Amy was pregnant. Rhonda suspects the crime scene was staged. In a real fight, the photo frames would have fallen down. The luminol test revealed a lot of blood in the kitchen. Rhonda suspects it was a homicide, and the only thing missing is a body. Not good news for Nick, as Noel claims Nick and Amy's marriage was terrible. Rhonda accuses him of spending Amy's money. Shocked at the amount of debt, Nick is convinced his identity was stolen. Also interesting to Rhonda is the fact that Nick increased Amy's life insurance to $1.2 million back in April. Rhonda gets a call confirming that Amy was pregnant. After the police leave, Margot comes in. Nick's on the phone with Andy, who's upset. Margot must finally learn the truth. Nick tells her he's also surprised by Amy's pregnancy and explains that it was Amy who didn't want children. Margot finds the third clue in Nick's hiding place, which he can't solve. Margot is disappointed that Nick is still hiding things and leaves. James and Rhonda return to Nick's father's house. The detective is eager to find a body to close the case. Meanwhile, Nick is trying to solve Amy's third clue. In the furnace, Rhonda discovers Amy's diary. Nick figures out the clue and heads straight to Margot's woodshed. Nick opens the shed and finds all the items listed on the bills. Welcome to Nick's paradise. There's a gift from Amy dated July 5th, the morning she disappeared. It was she who orchestrated everything. In Amy's eyes, Nick killed her by being lazy, lying to her, taking away her pride, her dignity, her hope, and her money. That equals murder, and he will go to prison for it. She was well prepared to fake her death. She created financial problems, bought a cheap getaway car with cash, and faked her pregnancy by befriending the naive Noel. She staged a crime scene with just enough flaws to create doubt, and used her own blood to make it look like a homicide. She invented fake stories about their violent relationship, described in the diary she left for the cops. Finally, she honored their anniversary tradition with a special treasure hunt. The truth is that she pretended to be the cool girl, as long as he remained the man of her dreams. She couldn't stand that he expected her to love him unconditionally, especially when she knew about the affair with the new cool girl, Andy. She won't let him destroy her and end up happier than ever. As Nick opens the gift, Margot reads the note Amy left for him. He realizes Amy knew about his affair. The subtext of the note says Nick will go to prison. He finally understands that Amy is framing him for her murder and what this is all about. Amy set him up so he couldn't have an alibi. She's good. July 6th, one day gone. Greta is glad to finally have a decent neighbor. Amy takes on a fake identity and relaxes at the pool. July 9th. Nick goes to see Tanner, the lawyer from the news who was defending him. Tanner is stunned by this whole mess, but he's all in, telling Nick he's the perfect attorney for him. Tanner advises Nick to stop people from seeing Amy as America's sweetheart and get help from someone she wronged in the past. Nick and Amy's ex-boyfriend Tommy meet at the bar. Tommy tells him he pled guilty to sexual assault to avoid jail, but he was innocent. Amy ruined his life, and now he can't get a job. Amy's enjoying the evening with Greta when she suddenly appears on the news. Greta doesn't like the real Amy, which makes her angry. Ellen spreads rumors that the siblings have an inappropriate relationship. Meanwhile, Amy is pleased that her plan is performing so well. Ellen reveals on the news that Missouri has the death penalty. Someone reports strange activity near the woodshed on Margot's property. Nick meets with Desi. Nick found Desi's address in one of his letters to Amy, but Desi refuses to help Nick. Rhonda is still going through the diary. James is convinced Nick is guilty, but the detective is still giving Nick the benefit of the doubt. July 10th, 5 days gone. The one question bothering Tanner is what's hidden at the father's house. Unfortunately, they can't get inside to find it because the police have prohibited entry. Tanner is sure that what they found is very bad for Nick. He wonders what Andy thinks about the case, so he suggests Nick tell the police about his affair before Andy can. Amy is in the Ozarks playing mini-golf with Greta and her boyfriend. She begins to doubt her plan because she's not the bad guy. She makes a mistake by dropping her purse while scoring, which leads her new friends to question her. Greta thought Amy was broke. July 11th, Amy's friends come to say goodbye. This was Greta's idea. She's not stupid and knows Amy won't call the police because she's lying about her identity. But she doesn't know that Amy is the gone girl from the news and doesn't care. Amy's money is gone. July 12th. Tanner and Margot are preparing Nick for an interview with Sharon. He has to play the gentle, honest, good guy the public needs. Amy's at the casino where she happens to meet Desi. She starts manipulating him and tells him lies about Nick, the baby, and the reason for her disappearance. Desi believes her story and reveals that Nick visited him. He still loves her and shares his joy that she saved his letters. He offers to hide her at his lake house. Sharon arrives to interview Nick but gets bad news on the phone. Andy's giving a statement on the news. Amy isn't pleased with Andy and her appearance. Tanner insists it's now too late for Nick's interview, but Nick asks him to trust him and convinces him to proceed as planned. Sharon puts on a smile. Lights on, show's on. Nick is amazingly good. Late at night at Desi's lake house, he shows her around and tells her to make herself at home. Apparently the house hasn't impressed Amy. She just wants to watch the news. He continues his tour, bragging about the security features. She can feel safe because there are cameras all around the house. July 13th. The morning is quiet until Desi's loud arrival. She lets him know that she must feel safe, which makes him glad. Sharon's show airs. Amy seems moved by Nick's words, as do the viewers. He loves Amy. She loved what Nick said. He's out of the woods. Immediately after the show, Rhonda and her team visit Margot to look inside the woodshed due to an anonymous tip. Rhonda seems disappointed with what they find. She regrets giving Nick the benefit of the doubt. Desi is impatient about his future with Amy and wants her badly. She asks for more time in a manipulative way. He will move in with her, and they'll sort it out together. Amy doesn't like this. Meanwhile, Nick is angry at the police. Luckily, Tanner's with him. Tanner knows they can't arrest Nick without a body. Only a confession can put him behind bars. Rhonda starts by showing him Amy's gift, the creepy puppets, and the fake diary. Tanner starts to sweat because Nick has a big mouth. Finally, Rhonda is convinced she has enough evidence to arrest Nick. There's nothing Tanner can do for him. July 26th, 21 days gone. Amy and Desi are living together. Still in her nightgown, Amy plays her role perfectly. She pours him coffee, brings him his forgotten keys, and instead of saying goodbye, kisses him so roughly that his lips begin to bleed. After he leaves, Amy stages another scene. By this time, Tanner has managed to get Nick out of jail. August 3rd, Amy's plan with Desi is the same as with Tommy. She leaves marks on her wrists with rope to make it look like she was tied up and assaulted. When Desi gets home, she seduces him. While making out with him, she slits his throat with a knife. August 4th. Nick is awakened by Amy's return. Still covered in blood, she arrives at his house playing the perfect victim. At the hospital, doctors examine Amy and find evidence of assault. Rhonda wants Nick's opinion because now it's clear he definitely didn't murder his wife. On painkillers, Amy tells the FBI agents her fabricated story. Desi, her former stalker, had kidnapped her and held her hostage, tying her up and assaulting her every night for the month she was missing. Rhonda suspects Amy is lying. By over-dramatizing her story, she appeals to the agents that they must find the security tapes that prove her story. James still isn't on Nick's side, although he understands that Amy couldn't possibly have slit Desi's throat while she was tied up the whole time. Rhonda asks Amy about her diary. Amy dodges the question by pretending to fade away. Amy now claims that Rhonda's incompetence almost cost Nick the death penalty, and that she would still be tied up if not for her escape. She manipulates people really well, and one of the agents praises her bravery. Now she smiles triumphantly. For Nick, it only caused problems. He's smarter now. The couple returns home. Amy's a star. People love her. The show is over. Nick is desperate to know what really happened. He doesn't trust Amy anymore. To make sure Nick isn't wearing a wire, Amy asks him to take off his clothes. They talk in the shower. In Nick's eyes, she's a murderer, but Amy keeps trying to convince him she was just fighting her way back to him. She came back because Nick begged her on TV. She obliged, but she wants the Nick from the interview. Nick wants to leave. Amy threatens him that he'll lose his reputation and she'll destroy him if he decides to leave. Before he goes to sleep, he finds out there was never a baby. Nick locks his door because now he's afraid. August 9th, 5 days home. With the help of Margot, Rhonda, and Tanner, he plans to take Amy to jail. Tanner jokes they should do a reality show. Amy's back on TV, and Tanner is impressed with how well she can lie. In his opinion, Nick is no longer at risk. Rhonda can't do anything for him either because the feds have closed the case. September 9th, 5 weeks home. Nick is having trouble sleeping at night. He still locks himself in, and journalists are still camping outside his house. Amy frightens Nick. September 23rd. Nick rehearses his speech to confess the truth about Amy's lies. Amy calls for breakfast, and they go over another speech they prepared together. She tells him to lie about the credit cards and about pushing her. That's what she needs to feel safe. Ellen appears at their home waiting for Amy. Nick speaks in a way that shows he hates her. Amy gives him a present. While Ellen is downstairs, Amy gives Nick a positive pregnancy test, which makes him nervous because he hasn't touched her. She tells him the child will hate Nick on his own, and she won't need to teach him. He angrily pushes her against the wall, So no, I say she's the terrible person he married, and she's the girl who will make him happy. During the interview, Nick tells Ellen that they're going to be parents. The movie is end. Thank you for watching. See you next time.